Okay, let's just dive right in with a question that sounds completely backward. What if the school you went to, the very act of being taught, was actually designed to make you feel, well, stupid? It's a wild idea, I know, and it kind of shakes the foundation of everything we believe about education. This line from the philosopher Jacques Rancière is the bombshell we're going to unpack today. What he's saying is that the classic image of a teacher, the expert at the front of the room explaining things to the ignorant student, doesn't actually empower us. It does the opposite. It makes us dependent. It, in his words, stultifies us. So how on earth did we get to a place where that's our main model? Well, to get it, you first have to look at where this model ends up, the modern university. And for a lot of people, it feels like it's in a serious crisis, like the whole system is breaking the promises of a better life and real knowledge that it's supposed to be giving to young people. And the problems are, they're all tangled together. You've got graduates coming out with massive debt into a shaky job market. At the same time, the universities themselves are losing their independence, becoming more and more tangled up with corporate and military money. And inside, they're often run by this huge bureaucracy that can just choke the life out of actual learning. But maybe the worst part is how fear and shame can get used to keep students in line, which just crushes the exact kind of curiosity that school is supposed to build. So how did our places of learning get so off track? To find the answer, we have to go back, way, way back, over 2,000 years ago, to ancient Greece, where two totally different ideas about what a school should be were born at the exact same time. And this, right here, shows you the split perfectly. On one side, you have Socrates. He's out in the public square, the marketplace, arguing with literally anyone who would talk to him. It's chaotic, it's public, it's personal. Then you have his student, Plato. He does the complete opposite. He sets up his academy in a private olive grove tucked away from the city. It's exclusive, it's highly structured, and it's all about studying these big, abstract, universal truths. Now, take a wild guess which one of these became the model for pretty much every school that followed. Yep, that decision to move from the open marketplace to the private grove, that was the first domino in a chain reaction that took 2,400 years, turning Plato's little club into the massive global institutions we have today. So you can see the journey, right? Plato's idea survives for almost 1,000 years. Then, when it's shut down, the knowledge doesn't vanish. It gets saved and even expanded in places like Baghdad's incredible House of Wisdom. Then the whole idea pops back up in Europe as these medieval universities, which were all about religion, and finally that evolves into the modern university we know, which is totally tied up with the needs of big business and government. And with every single step, the system gets more rigid, the hierarchy gets steeper, and the gap between the all-knowing teacher and the empty-headed student gets wider and wider. Which brings us right back to Rancière's killer critique. See, he's not just talking about a few bad teachers here and there. He's talking about the entire system we just watched evolve. A system built on one basic assumption, that one person has all the knowledge, and their job is to just pour it into another person's empty brain.
And that key word is stultification. It sounds complicated, but it's simple. The system works by constantly confirming to the student that they can't figure things out on their own. The teacher is presented as this essential bridge to knowledge. But by being the bridge, the teacher accidentally creates a permanent need for a bridge. The main thing the student learns is that they'll always need a teacher to understand anything important, which leads to a really wild question.
What if learning is a totally natural thing that we all do, but teaching, at least the way we think about it, is actually impossible and gets in the way? What if real learning is something else entirely? Well, funny enough, the best example of this comes from the guy who started it all, Plato, in his famous dialogue, the Meno. Okay, this story is legendary in philosophy, and for good reason. It's the perfect illustration of how someone can learn something really complex, not because they were lectured at, but because they were gently guided to figure it out for themselves. So here's the setup. Socrates calls over a young slave boy, someone who's had zero formal schooling in geometry. He crouches down, draws a square in the dirt, and says he's going to prove that this kid already has the knowledge inside him. He just needs a little help pulling it out. So Socrates asks the question. The boy, using total common sense, gives the obvious answer. Easy, just make the sides twice as long. Now a normal teacher would say, wrong, but Socrates doesn't. He just asks more questions. He makes the boy draw it out and see with his own two eyes, that doubling the sides makes the square 4 times bigger, not 2. And this right here, is the most crucial moment. The boy is totally stumped. His confidence is gone. He realizes, for the first time, that he is ignorant. And it's only from that place, that I don't know moment, that real learning can actually start. With just one tiny hint from Socrates about the diagonal, the boy's eyes light up and he figures out the answer all by himself. And that is the whole secret. Socrates never gave the boy the answer. He just created the right conditions for the boy to find it on his own. He was a guide, not an explainer. Learning isn't about passively receiving information. It's about actively discovering it. Okay, so if the traditional way of teaching can actually cause harm, and the Socratic way is more about being a guide, what should the number one rule for any educator be? Well, maybe we ought to borrow it from another ancient profession, medicine. First, do no harm. Before you try to teach anything, before you explain, before you correct, your first job is to make sure you aren't damaging the student's own natural ability to learn. Don't destroy their confidence, don't make them terrified of being wrong, and above all, don't make them dependent on you. So what does that actually look like? It means creating a space where getting something wrong isn't a disaster. It's just part of the process. It means you let a student struggle with a problem for a while before you swoop in to save them. It means you gotta fight that impulse to just give them the answer. It means you stop using your authority or shame to control the room. It means you have to actually trust, really trust, that the student can and will figure it out.
And all of this leaves us with one last big thought. In an age where you can Google any fact in 5 seconds, where any lecture you could ever want is on YouTube, maybe the purpose of a school isn't to be a place that just hands out information anymore. Maybe its real job is to be a gym, a place where we build the courage to be wrong, the humility to say I don't know, and the confidence to learn things for ourselves. A place that doesn't make you stupid, but empowers you to see your own ignorance as the beautiful, true beginning of all wisdom.